Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for a FieldView Seed Scripts webinar today. We are thrilled to have you here with us. We know that planting will be upon us very soon, and that's a great sign for the spring weather to be showing up. I know the sunshine and the warmth here. I'm in Southern Illinois, not too far from St. Louis, but it's supposed to be a nice warm 81 degrees here today. So I'm looking forward to taking my computer outside and having a little front porch office time. But we will get started here with our content. If you'll go to the next slide, please. We have some great folks on the phone with us today, and they're going to cover a lot of great content related to FieldView seed scripting. And we want to make sure that you have all of the questions that are on your mind answered today. So there are a couple ways that you can do that. You should see the Q&A box over on the right of your screen. If you don't see that, utilize the controls at the bottom of your screen, bring up the Q&A box or the chat. I'll be keeping an eye on both of those throughout the webinar so that if you send questions in there, I will make sure I get them posed to our panelists. So go ahead to the next slide and let's talk about who we have on our call today as our experts. So first off, I'm Mindy McDermott. I'm a learning and development specialist at Climate. I've been here for going on my 6th year and was formerly a high school agriculture teacher before I came to industry. So I will be the host and I'll be handling all the controls on the back end. But our experts this morning are Dan Coombs. He is a climate activation manager. He's been with FieldView for 5 years, and he is in southeast North Dakota. I think I've hit just about every aspect of the compass there with that introduction or location for Dan. But as the picture shows, Dan basically works and fishes. And it depends on what day it is, which one he's doing more of, if he's doing more fishing or working. But we're thrilled to have him here and to walk through the seed scripting components today. We also have Jarrett Halsey on the phone, and he is a part of our technical product support team, which is our level 2 support. So if it gets to him, it's usually probably a little more complex. So that just means that he really knows all the ins and outs of FieldView and can solve and answer the really tough questions, which is why we brought him on the line to make sure that we answer all our questions of the technical nature in the correct fashion. Jarrett is in Missouri. He grew up in Kansas City and received a bachelor's degree in agronomy from the University of Central Missouri. So we're thrilled to have him and Dan here on the phone. And without any further delay, Dan, I'm going to pass it to you and let you dive into our scripting content.
Very good. Thank you, Mindy. So today what we're going to go through is we're going to go through FieldView seed scripting. I'm sure as the title knows in the registration, you guys have probably figured that out. What I wanted to first start off with is just kind of level set and understand the difference in what our platform's offering. So we offer 2 different styles of scripting services. The first one is a manual scripting. This is something that's actually included in your FieldView subscription, though the subscription you get every year. It's a basic tool. It's definitely, it works for sure. A couple of things about this is you as the grower or as the retailer will actually sit down and define the zones and the rates. Nothing is automated for you. You can use this for planting corn, beans, wheat, any crop that you're planting. You can also use this for fertility and crop protection scripts. And like I said before, this is included in your subscription already, so this is not an additional cost. The other level that we have is what we call FieldView seed scripts. This is a little bit more intricate, a little bit more defined. This is something that actually takes the science of agronomics and science of data that's on your farm and actually helps create automatic zones, and it'll actually provide a seeding rate for you. You as the farmer or the dealer can actually edit the zone, so you guys can make your tweaks if you'd like to do so. One of the things I like about this is, like the slide says, it allows you to take in yield or imagery layers. You can actually lay those layers behind and start fact checking the work that we're doing. So it's something that you can actually take your data and make a seed script based off of your data, but it also leverages Bayer's hybrid trials all across the United States and Canada. So it does give you a little bit more of a recommendation than just a script. So it's giving you a little bit more than just the seeding script. It's also helping you choose that population that you want to have for your farm. The seeding population is only available for corn. These are $1 an acre scripts. So it's definitely something that it's a little bit more expensive than the manual scripting, but I think once we get into it, you'll start seeing this is where the value comes. There are some promotions floating around depending on where you're at in the country. Nationwide program that we have is Script 100. And what this is going to do is when you're going through the checkout process, what you'll do in the promotion code box is type in Script 100, and it's going to get you 100 free acres of scripting or for the FieldView seed scripts. And we'll go more in depth in kind of the details as we go through, but this is just kind of a high over level. So FieldView seed scripting requirements. This is something that the first slide here we're going to go to is something we definitely need to spend a little bit of time talking about because it's definitely pretty dang important in my opinion. Data quality and data requirements. If you've heard any of the climate spiels or presentations over the years, you probably heard junk in, junk out. Same thing applies to our seed scripting. A couple of things we want to make sure of is we want to make sure we have good boundaries. As you can see in the picture here, there's a waterway that's actually cutting that field apart. What we want to do is we want to make sure that those boundaries are as tight to the planted acres of the field as we can get them. So if you got, as you can see, like on the bottom side of that field, those trees are shading into the field. We want to make sure we cut those out because those are definitely going to affect the imagery when we use the imagery-based seeding maps. We want to make sure the planting layers or the planting and the harvest layers match. We want to make sure those boundaries are tight. A couple other things we need to have is we need to make sure we have a variable rate ready planter, or if you're using this for fertility or spraying, we want to make sure that your machine is compatible to actually use a variable rate map. If you want to use the yield data option, and again, like I said before, you can use either imagery or yield data to create these scripts. If you want to use the yield data, you need to make sure we have 2 years of yield data, and one of those years needs to be corn. We'll get a little bit more into that as we go through, but then you'll be able to take a look at some of these yield maps as we go forward. So continuing on the data quality and requirements kind of concept, this is a good example of making sure those boundaries are cleaned and making sure those boundaries are consistent. This is an example of a field you can see in 2019. We farmed this field end to end, but you can see on a different year here. I know it says 2019 soy, but you can see when we planted soybeans, we did not farm that whole field. What we need to do for something like this is as those boundaries have changed, so you can see over years we've changed how we farm this field. What we need to do is we need to split the field into 2 boundaries. Ideally, we want to make sure we have 1 year of corn crop in the past 4 years. This is going to help us get better imagery or better yield maps. So the nice thing when you're utilizing the FieldView platform is you can actually take in more of this information. So when you're using all of our applications and you're actually inputting some of your farm data into FieldView, what you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to visualize these maps and start stacking the maps to see the differences throughout your farm. So something you'd be able to do here, this is an example of our black app where we're using the split screen functionality. But you can see here on one side we have the yield. So the left side of that screen, we're looking at the yield map. And the right side, we're looking at the population map. Nice thing with this is you can lay as many layers as you'd like side by side and start making those comparisons. So if you wanted to look at population against yield, maybe field health and how that came against your yield, or how the field health actually kind of is a good representation of what the yield maps are looking like, this is a great platform to do so. The nice thing with this is this is all data from your guys' farm. This isn't something else, and it's allowing you to better visualize the data from your farm. Couple things to note when it comes to the equipment capabilities. When we're talking with planters and just kind of sticking with the seeding side of this thing, if you have a planter that has an electric drive, such as like Precision Planning's 2020 or Precision Planning's ESET or VSET meters, once you start getting into the ESETs where you have the electric drive, I know John Deere and a bunch of other companies have these. When you have the electric drive, typically what that means is you're going to get down to individual row shutoffs and you're going to get the individual row controls. What you're going to see with this when you're doing the script is you're going to be much more precise and you're going to have much more granular zones. As you can see, when you look at the picture here on the left-hand side, you can see how that planner, each individual row was controlled differently. You can actually get down to those zones. Getting those zones very tight and very consistent when you're making the script is much more important. Whereas if you look on the right side, when you get a hydraulic driven, depending on how that planner is set up, usually you have a limit of 3 to 5 zones when you're looking at how you set the scripts up. And then your zones are as wide as the planter was set up. So you can have them as a full planter width. I know some planters, especially up here, you get the bigger planters, they start breaking them into zones, but you don't get as granular with your zones. So when you start looking, if we compare this image on the left, we've got an electric drive meter. Where on the right-hand side, you can see we've got hydraulic driven meters. You can see how much or how big of a difference you have. Now, both are going to do a good job. Just some of the electric drive is going to get much more granular and much more in-depth when you're looking at where you're putting your seed. So what I'm going to do is, just to try and save some time, I'm actually going to jump into some live demos. Let's get through this. Stop sharing. And Mindy, can you confirm you can? Oh, sorry.
Yes, yeah, go ahead. Yes, I can see your screen. It is stretched pretty wide, but I think we can still go ahead and view it in that fashion.
Okay. Let's look. So first thing we'll do is we'll go and we'll actually create a manual FieldView script. You can build the scripts from your iPad. A couple things that I would say is, if you're going to get into the scripts and you're going to start making manual adjustments, make sure you're using some sort of device with a mouse. 99% of the time, you're going to be using a computer with a mouse. The only place you can actually build the FieldView scripts are from climate.com. You can use an iPad, like going through Google Chrome on your iPad to do this. But my recommendation, I built enough scripts to know, use a computer with a mouse. Otherwise, that touch screen is going to get kind of goofy on there. So my recommendation, start off with coming right to the computer. And so what you'll do is, once you're in FieldView here, you'll come over to prescriptions. And if you haven't done this for a couple of years, you'll notice there's a lot of things that have changed. The concepts are definitely the same as they were a few years ago. But if you've done the variable rate thing with FieldView in the past, you'll notice there's a few more options here. I'm going to let this load. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to come in here and find the field that you like. If you have scripts built for prior years, this is a good place to start. What you can do, so for example, this field from 2020 and 2018, I actually have scripts built from those years. You can take a look at them if you wanted to come back and reference some of the things that you looked in the prior years. All you have to do is come down to this drop down, and you can see on the left-hand side, I've got my 2 scripts from 2020. The nice thing with this is as you build this, every time you make a change, it's going to save that new change as a second copy. So anytime, just say you built maps for the last 5 years, you can actually come in and see all 5 years of those maps. So it's nice to be able to come back and reference the changes you're making year over year. So you can see here, this is all my seeding maps that we built for 2020. But what I'll do here is I'll go through the manual prescription layer. So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to start off with building a manual corn prescription for this field. So you can see here, this is where you can make the decision between manual planting or the FieldView seed scripts, which is a little bit more automated. So we'll start with the manual planting prescription. So if you're familiar with this or you've done this in the past, this is probably a little bit different screen for you. So we've got a couple different options with creating manual planting prescriptions. The first one here is draw your own zones. And this is essentially, you're going to get a blank map and you're going to start dropping points wherever you want inside of the field. Essentially a clean slate, you're starting fresh. The Surgo zone. So these are Surgo soil zones. And what this is going to do is it's going to create a different, essentially a different zone for each individual soil group inside of the field. And we'll go through some of this here, so don't feel like I'm going to drop it here. If you have prescriptions from maybe from prior years, from different systems, different companies, and you wanted to use those or maybe tweak the zones on those, that's where this would come in handy for you. So you can actually import zones from just wherever you've scripted in the past. Maybe you have them saved on a different thumb drive. You can bring those in and you can start making edits and tweaks to those. Or here we've got this box where you can actually use zones from a previous prescription. So you can see, for example, on this field, I've got scripts from 2020 and 2018. If I wanted to use those or I wanted to make a couple adjustments to those, what I would do is I would select this and then I can start making adjustments to the scripts from 2 years ago or last year or whenever you've had previous maps made from this account. If you're new to this is, or if you've done this in the past and kind of coming back to this is definitely a new feature for this year, and I think I'm pretty dang excited for this. This is actually giving you the ability to generate a map or zone from a map layer. So this is the example we'll use right away. So I'll do this. And what this is going to allow you to do is you're actually going to make a variable rate seeding script based on imagery from last year or the last couple years that you have imagery inside your account. So I'll pick 2021. As this loads here. What this is going to allow you to do is this is going to bring in all of the imagery of the scouting maps that you have saved in your account. So for this particular field, we have 4 years of imagery saved on the account. What it's going to allow you to do is it's going to allow you to come in and select an image that you feel best represents the variability inside of that field. And it's going to allow you to make some zones around it. So I'm going to come down here. We'll find a good image that represents the field. So I know this kind of end of June, early July is usually a pretty good representation. You get a little bit of that stress. Everything's out of the ground, at least for our area. This is usually a pretty good image to use. So I'll pick this June 19th. And again, just for those that didn't hear, I'm farming in North Dakota, or I work in North Dakota, so you may have some different times. But for us, that late June, early July is a pretty good representation of the variability in the field. For us, usually we're starting to get a little bit of heat stress. Depending on the years, we're getting a lot of kind of the moisture stress. So this is usually a good time of year to start seeing the variability inside of our fields up here. And every part of the country might be a little different depending on where you're calling in from. And once you get to this, what this is going to do is this is going to allow you to select the number of zones that you have inside of your field. So you can go all the way down to 2 zones, and you can go all the way up to 10 or 12 zones. So you can see here, the nice thing is you can see that image, you can start seeing that variability inside of the field. And you can go all the way up to 12 zones. So you can see we went from 2 zones on that prior screen. And you can see how busy it gets with 12 zones. One thing you'll notice is as the more zones you get, the smaller obviously the zones, each individual zone is. So each one of these zones is 5 acres. And as I scroll down, you can start seeing the individual pockets of those zones on the right-hand side in that map. Couple things to note when you're deciding, I mean, especially if you're new to variable rate, one of the first questions I always get asked, how many zones is enough? How many zones is too much? And I would say, from my experience, 90% of the customers that I work with are between 3 and 6 zones. And a lot of this has to go back to what we talked about equipment. Majority of our customers are still running a hydraulic dry planter. Once you go into that 12 zones, your zones are so small that the planter a lot of times is not going to pick up those small 12 by 12 chunks in the field. So that's where we don't usually go into the 12 zones, but definitely some growers like to have that huge detail. And if you have machinery to make those changes that fast as you're planting through the field or spreading fertilizer through the field, I'd say go right ahead. But if you're definitely starting out on this, usually 3 to 6 is where I see most of the customers kind of hanging out. So we'll use 3 for a good example here. So you can see here, we've got our planted date, our planned planting date, and our hybrid in here. And what this is doing, this information does not really go anywhere on the manual planting prescription other than start helping you make the file name. So you can see down here, our field, as found up top, is Kaiser's Southeast. The next thing is DKC 4415, and this is coming from our hybrid name. And then the last is the date that we created the script. If you wanted to come in here and you wanted to make some changes to this, so like here, I've changed the name so it's a little bit easier to read. Couple things to know with this is the more descriptive you name this prescription file name, the easier it's going to be for who's ever executing that variable rate prescription in the cab. Because when you start getting into the really long, lots of dashes, lots of hard things to see, or if you're making multiple scripts for different fields, you want to make it clear that this is the right script for the field. So for example, on this field, we're going to plant DeKalb 4415. But a lot of times what we'll do is we'll make a script for every hybrid, depending on how flex the years are and how the year is going to go. So if you're one of the growers that's going to make multiple scripts for those fields, make sure you come down here to the prescription file name and make them very clear. So for example, if we were going to plant Pioneer, or maybe we weren't sure at this time if we're going to plant DeKalb or Pioneer on this field, we're going to make 2 scripts, make a script for the Pioneer and make a script for the DeKalb. But this is an easy way in here where it says Kaiser's Pioneer. This is an easy way to make it much easier for the person sitting in the tractor to know which script they need to pick. Hopefully that makes sense and I'm not confusing you here. Let's finish this in editor. So you can see here, this is a pretty generic map. What this is going to do is this is going to give us our zones. So the thing I like to do is come over here to the bottom right hand side and see where it says population rate, is come in here and change my map. This is where the more years of data that you have in FieldView, this is where it really starts paying off for you as the grower or you as the script writer, because the more years of information you have in here, the more accurate, the much tighter you can make your zones based on your field and your farm. So for example, I went through and just picked a couple good showcase examples here. So you can see here, obviously my maps are a little bit, probably not as nice and clean as I'd like them to be, especially for a guy that's presenting on this. But you can see here, and we can lay the maps behind here, and you can start seeing how those images and how those representations of the field in the field health imagery kind of reflect a yield map. So here we're looking at a 2018 yield map. What we can do is we'll go back to our images. So I'll go back to in season. We looked at a June 19th image. So you can see it's hard to see when we're looking at this, and I know it's hard to see, I'm sure, on your screen, depending on what kind of screen you're using. But what you'll be able to see is this is the image that we use. So we use the June 19th image, and you can see how those zones follow the breaks in the lines on the imagery. And this is where, when we talked about making sure your boundaries are very good and very tight, if we zoom out here, you can see kind of what the stuff we farm. And here's a good example. There's a half section with probably 70 different sloughs in it, or a full section here, all sorts of sloughs. The tighter you can make your boundaries around things like waterways, ditches, tree shelter belts, rock piles, any of that stuff that's an obstruction in the field that there's not a crop raised on, You want to make sure you can get those boundaries as tight as you can, because it's going to make your prescriptions much tighter, much more accurate to the field that you're actually farming. So you can see here, we'll use this kind of as a reference. And now we'll go back to our population rate. So let's just say we want to put in, where's our zone? The nice thing with this is you can come over here and you can select your zone, and it's what it's going to do is on the right-hand side of the map, it's actually going to show you the zone or where that zone's at inside of the field. So I would call this our mediocre part of the field, or kind of our median field. So we'll plant 28,000 in that area. Where's zone 2? I would call this some of our little bit better stuff depending on where it's at. So we'll call it 32,000. And we'll get in zone 3, and there's a lot of kind of drought out stuff here, a little bit of drowned out. Some years this can be really good, and some years this can be really bad. So what we'll do is we'll come in the middle of the two, and we'll come in at 30,000. And as simple as that is, we put our populations into each one of those zones. And now you can see this is the population map over on the right-hand side. If you wanted to make edits, tweaks, or changes to this, that's where this toolbar here in the upper right-hand corner allows you to come in here and make those changes. If you wanted to put some sort of, just say a population block that's a kind of a fixed rate across the whole field, what you could do here, select polygon, select 4 points. So just like that, I know this isn't a perfect square, but it should give you guys kind of an idea of what we're trying to target here. We'll come in here and we'll just say this is what our fixed population. Maybe this is the population that we normally plant on our farm. What this is going to do is as you plant through this, it's going to give you kind of a reference. I know for a lot of people, myself included, as we start getting into the variable rate, one of the questions we always have is this the right decision for the farm? Was this the right population? Did we do this right? And by coming in here and making some of these population blocks, what it's allowing you to do is it's allowing you to fact check, did you select the right population? Was this the right part of the field to do variable rate on? This is kind of allowing you as the customer or the grower, the ability to kind of fact check your work. A couple of things, if you're going to make these changes or do these population blocks, some of the things you want to make sure it's wide enough that when you come through the planter, you're not going to miss it, or you're not going to get half a planter width. You can see here, this is a pretty good population block. I don't know that you need to do one this big, but for reference, you can start seeing all the shelter belts. This is plenty wide. We should be able to get 3, 4, 5 planter passes through here. This is a pretty good core example for us to help come back and see, is this what we wanted to do? So what I'm going to do with this, once I'm done, so I'll call this good. I'm ready to plant now. What I'll do is I'll save this. Save our changes. So when we come back, you'll be able to see here's our map. If we ever wanted to come back and make a different change, or maybe we wanted to tweak this just a little bit more before we get into the field, what we'll do is we'll come in here and we'll select edit prescription. This will bring us right back to that prescription. If we want to make some changes, we want to make some tweaks, whatever we want to do, come back in here and just hit save again. So one of the questions we get a lot is, okay, I'm variable rating my corn seed. Now I want to variable rate my fertility. What you can actually do is when you come over here to fertility, come in here and select create new prescription. Now I know this gets a little bit goofy because we don't want to create a new prescription, but what this is going to allow you to do is we'll go back through here on manual fertility prescription. And this is where this use zones from previous prescription comes in extremely handy. So we'll select that. So you can see here, these are all of the different population, all the different variable rate scripts that I've built. Obviously, primary planting zones from 2022. This is the map we just built here. We'll select this. And this is a good way to show if you've built maps for the last 5, 6, 8, 10 years, whatever it may be, and you wanted to start reusing those maps, this is going to be the same process for you. So this application timing, when are you going to put the fertilizer down? We're going to do pre-plant. We'll select our fertilizer type. So we'll select nitrogen. Are we going to do a liquid or are we going to do a granular? So we're obviously going to spread urea ahead of time. We may or may not put other fertilizers in here. Couple things to note with this, and this is something that I want to make sure everybody knows, because this is going to apply to other things as well, is when you select a nitrogen, this is not actually a pound for pound rate. This is going to use the applied rate of N, where if you select lime, phos, or potassium, this is going to be a true 1-to-1. When we get into and I'll explain it here in a second. Again, our same thing, we want to change our prescription file name so it's easy to read. Go forward. So you can see here when we're looking at this is what I was talking about on that prior screen, this is our actual rate of N. So if we wanted to put down 45 pounds of N, this is actually how much product we would need when we selected urea in that prior screen. If we were to go back and just say, I'll use lime, for example, and I'll pick the first one, just kind of as a reference. Maybe you're putting phos, you're putting mez, whatever you're putting down. When I put 150 in here, this is the actual rate that the machine is going to kick out. So if you're using the lime, the phos, or the potassium dropdown, this is a true 1-to-1 ratio. If you're coming in here and you're going to select the nitrogen, you need to make sure that the fertilizer you select down here is truly the blend that you're going to use. Otherwise, you're going to have to start doing some back figuring to kind of get it all creative. So if I want 150 pounds of N in this zone, I want 225 pounds of N in that zone, 250 and 300. What it's going to do is it's actually going to give you, this is your true rates of N, and this is going to give you your product rate. So depending on where you're at in the country, I know like if you get into the Dakotas, very few people actually use rates or pounds of N an acre, and they just talk in true pounds an acre. That's just something I want everybody to be aware of as you're building these scripts, is just that ratio. And obviously once you get into here, you'll see that. If you get into here and don't like this, you can come up here to edit settings and select a different fertilizer type. I'll be honest, when I'm doing this, 98% of the time I'm going to select lime every time, just because when we build our rates, we're going to build it. We need 100 pounds of mez. We need 100 pounds of this product in this zone. We don't want to have to do the back figuring, because a lot of times we're going to blend two products at the elevator, and we're not going to have a true rate of N because we're spreading two products at one time through one machine. Hopefully that didn't confuse anybody. And if anybody has any questions on that or wants me to go over it, just put it in the chat and I'm more than happy to go over it again. So here, we'll just go in and enter our rates. Again, I know this doesn't match our previous map. I started talking and I couldn't remember where I put my zones. But what you'll do is you put your rates of what you want to come out of the machine into here. And then you just hit save, just like we did with the prior script before. Mindy, is there any questions while this is reloading here?
Absolutely, there are. So first off, Dan, folks love the population block, and the question around the population block is, can they add a hybrid block to test if they are planting the correct population or correct hybrid, on the correct soil type?
Yes, let me get back into here and I will try and refine that field again. So if I understand the question right, what you want to do is you want to see if you're thinking about putting two hybrids inside of the field and trying to test the flex of each one. If I understand that right, hopefully this is the right answer here. Once this loads, actually I could probably answer this without actually looking at it. So these maps are not specific to one individual hybrid. If you, for example, wanted to place 2 hybrids inside of that population block, you're more than welcome to place 2 hybrids. You can put as many hybrids in there. This is not going to control what you're filling, obviously, in the planter. I'll get this map pulled back up. It doesn't look like it saved my scripts, but just give me 1 sec.
Hey, Dan, and then
And
Mark
Dan, I think
also,
that this might be also a good time to point out some of the differences between our manual scripting and our, FieldView seed scripts that you're going to talk about here in a few moments.
Yep. Yes. So
Dan, if you're also creating another script, Mark had a question on with the multi-hybrid plantings and bag counts. Just if you make a multi-hybrid script showing it does do the bag counts for each field.
Okay, perfect. I'll do that when I get into the next piece. I just want to try and answer that first question here. So here we're back to our original script. And so when I'm looking at this, if I want to place different, actually, so our average population that we normally plant is 32,000. Let's pick our zone. Again, I'm just trying to recreate my work a little bit. Zone 3. So I think if I understand the question right, is if I wanted to put multiple hybrids in this test block, am I able to do that? And the answer is yes. You can put as many hybrids as you want in this test block. If you're not sure, so just say you don't know that you want to come in and just say you're not sure exactly where you're going to run out when you come into this field. One of the things what I've seen guys do is they'll put multiple test blocks. Maybe they'll put 1 or 8 across the north section of this field, 1 across the south section, and 1 maybe right through the middle. And then what you can do is you'll have that test block, just say you're going to plant it north to south, not quite sure where you're going to run out. That way you'd have multiple different test blocks for multiple different hybrids. Because this is not going to control the hybrid in the planter unless you're running a multi-hybrid planter. And I'll get into that here when we get into the advanced or the FieldView seed scripts, but I just wanted to, hopefully that answered part of that question.
Yes, Dan, I think it did. And I think you'll get into this and show this in when you're doing the FieldView seed scripts. But I also want to call out, I think that this next question is more about a possible feature enhancement. But the question is, are we going to get a total for hybrids used for all fields? So they're asking for a summary page that they could give to a seed rep. When they use their multi-hybrid planter, they plant multi-hybrids on most fields, and they would like a entire farm, report for their bags of use for each hybrid.
Yes, okay. Okay, that's good. So that's something that we don't currently have today. We can actually do it by field, and I know it's a pain, especially the larger the farm gets, the more work you're going to do. I'm definitely writing that note down right now so I can give it to the product manager for scripting. Give me 1 sec.
Yeah, and I have that written down, Dan,
Okay.
so you don't have to worry about that. And those were 2 separate questions, just so you know. Like, it wasn't a clarification. The first question you answered correctly.
Perfect. Well, very good. Well, I'll jump into the FieldView seed scripts, and hopefully you guys can start seeing some of the differences, and I'll try and break it apart as best I can. So with the seed scripts here, what this is going to do is this is where we start talking about the science and the farm data. That's where this starts to kind of definitely play into what's going on inside of this field. So you can see here, I don't obviously have really good yield data for these first 3 years. We have yield data in the count all the way through 2020 on this field. But what you'll see here is it actually does not let me use the yield data for 2020. And I'll show you why here in a second. But one of the things that it's going to do is if it doesn't think that the yield data is a good representation for this field, maybe you had 3 combines in the field and 2 weren't calibrated and they were just way wonky. A lot of times it's going to kick that out because it wants to use the most accurate data. 9 times out of 10 situations like that, the field health data is going to be a perfect representation of what a true yield map would have been. So you can see here, we've done some multi-crops inside of this field, just on a low spot or low edge. You can see we've got to come in here and just clarify some things. So like here, you can see we've got soybean yield data. We've also got a corn in there. Now it's important to note too, and I think we talked about this earlier, we do need to have 1 year of corn in here. If you're some of the guys, especially in my territory, that maybe you don't raise corn, one of the things you can do is you can come in here, maybe you're a wheat grower. Just say 2019 was a wheat year for you. What you can do to trick the system is call your wheat crop the corn crop, and that will kind of get you past this, especially maybe you're new to corn, haven't raised corn a lot. This is a good way to kind of trick the system. So we'll go in here, and this is also a good point to say, if you have data maybe where you have something, you had two hybrids and they were vastly different, maybe one ran 150 and one ran 225 in the field, this would be the really one of the few examples of where you'd want to deselect it. So maybe 2017, I had some really wonky data. Maybe we had a hailstorm inside this field, we had weather, we had something we couldn't control that caused this yield map to be weird. What this would be about the only time you want to remove my layer. A lot of growers will say we don't want to have our dry years in there. I would challenge you and say the dry years, what they really do is they really showcase the difference outside of the field. The yield maps might not be pretty, but they're going to show you the drastic changes inside of that field, probably better than a good year would. So again, we're kind of on the same screen here. There's a little bit different with this advanced seed scripts. So you can see I'll use the same hybrid. Let's just use something different. So you can see here, I've got my 4415 selected. You can see that it's actually got this tested logo. Let's pick just a competitive brand, something that Bayer obviously doesn't own. You notice how it doesn't have that tested logo on the bottom of that? You can see over here, the notes will tell you, but what this is telling you is that it's actually bringing in the data that Bayer has on the backside. So Bayer does a huge network of trials across the country. From FTNs to Gen 5, there's all sorts of different trials that Bayer's doing to try and find the right population for the hybrid across the right region. What this is going to do is it's going to take a lot of that data from the backside and help create a recommendation for your farm or this hybrid for your farm. Couple things to know in here too. It's going to tell you our highest corn yield was 182 bushel. Your average was also 182 bushel in here. When you come in here and you enter this information in these three boxes, it may or may not hurt depending on what information you put in here. But what I want you to do is I want you to put an accurate representation of what you think you're going to get. Obviously, this is telling us our average and our highest was 182. I don't want to come in here and put 240. This is truly 180, 190 bushel field. I want to put in our target dry yield in there to be an accurate reflection. Same thing with our seed cost. We're all hoping for $15 corn. I don't think it's going to happen. Trying to put a true grain price in here will help essentially get you a great recommendation. And I'll show you here, if you don't put it in there right, what's going to happen. So what I'm using 182 for my dry yield, $300 for my cost per bag, and $3 corn. And again, we're looking at the same field here. What this is going to do is this is going to start taking all of the data for all of the years and start stacking that data and help drive you to a much more accurate map, if you will. So what this is going to do is this kicked out 3 zones automatically. One of the things that the reason we kick out certain numbers of zones is we want to make sure that we have a large enough difference between zones. So as you can see, we'll go from 3 zones. When we go to 7, we've got one zone at 33.5. We got one zone at 31.1 and one zone at 35,000. Just say we go to 8 zones. What you'll notice in here is that the difference between zones 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is not a huge jump. So like, for example, we've got zone 1 at 33,500, zone 8 at 34,000, zone 4, 34.5. The reason we start kicking out some of these zones, you're not going to notice a huge difference, and we want to show you really where you're going to get the value and where you're going to see the huge differences. Also, you look at a map like this when we go up to 8 zones, a lot of times most planners, most spreaders, whatever you're going to use, aren't going to stay on top of it. As you look at some of those zones are smaller than a true planter width. Is it really valuable to start getting that in depth? That's a question you'll have to answer for, I guess, for yourself. But what this is going to do is this is going to take all of your data layers and stack them on top of each other to help get you a good zone set. So I think personally, 5 zones is about the max that we'll ever use. That's, I would say, the max that most growers will ever use. And we can always change this and tweak this. But you can see here what our seed costs and our grain price and our target dry yield. As we make those changes, it's going to change our recommendation for our population. So right now our average population is 33,400. I'll come in here and I'll bump it up to 210 bushel dry yield. We'll let this load quick. We went from 33.5 to 36,000 in our average population. You can see we're trying to get the accurate number in here is going to make a big difference. Truly, would I love to see 210 on this field? I would love to see that every year, but it's just not realistic for this field. So getting those realistic numbers in there is going to help get you a much more accurate population. The other thing you're going to know is as we start taking a lot of that Bayer data on the backside, depending on the hybrid you select, especially when it's got that tested logo, depending on your hybrid, you're going to start seeing different population rates inside of your zones. Some of those years are a very fixed year. Some of them are a very flexed year. If you get a very fixed year, you're going to notice a huge population rate between all of your zones. So that is the benefit, is once you jump into this. And again, this is $1 an acre, but this is where you start seeing the value of that $1 an acre and the value of getting more hybrids here, is you're starting to see some of those population swings based off of the individual hybrid and not just the field. So you can see here, I've got 5 zones inside of this field. What I'm going to do here, because like, for example, on this zone 1, it's 2/10 of an acre. It's just right on the edge of this slough. What I want to do is I want to merge that zone over here with the rest of that. So I select my zone 1 and zone 2. I'm going to do over here to merge. I'll select zone 1, zone 2 again. Save them. I remember what I had for my target yield in that area. We'll fill it in. So now you can see I'm down to 4 zones. And if you wanted to make those changes, just like we did on the prior maps, all of those options are still here and available for you to do. The thing you'll notice is when we get into these variable or these FieldView seed scripts, they're going to be much, much more accurate when you start stacking data layers on top of it. So when we come down here to change our map, we'll look at, I've got 3 different years picked out I want to compare here. So I'll take my 16 corn. Actually, it was a different year. So I use my 17 corn map here. And as we zoom in, we start looking at where these lines are. You can see the yield map that I've got on the background, how close that yield map and our seed script are start following the individual zones here. This is a pretty good sand ridge up here, and you start getting, and you can see how our drainage comes through the field. Traditionally, this is a little bit poorer area. As we look throughout different years, we can start seeing how those different years start to show through year after year. And you can see how this paying this $1 an acre is going to get you a much tighter map that's a much better reflection of your field. The other piece I'll put in here is the more data you have in your account, the better off you're going to be when it comes to the scripting, and the more you're going to be able to fact check our work when we built this script. So I know there was a question around adding a liquid starter. So here's a good example. If you wanted to add liquid starter for your planter for this, what you would do is you'd come over here to edit settings, come down to here where it says I'm using a liquid starter, come back to your zones, and all you need to do is you need to come in here and enter the rates for each individual zone. So let's just use 4 gallons here, 6 gallons here, 5, and then 4.5 or 4 again. As simple as that is, now you have a separate script. What it's going to do is it's going to kick out 2 scripts for you to import into your monitor, one for your population and one for your liquid. Same thing goes, we'll turn off our liquid starter, and I want to add another hybrid in here. I think that question got asked before. So I'll just pick the 4412 as a second hybrid here. When I come back to my zones, you can see here what it's going to do is it's going to give me the option to select the right hybrid for the zone. So if you're running a multi-hybrid planner, let's just say on zone 1, I want to run 4415. Zone 2, I want to run 4412. Zone 3, I want to run 4415 again. In zone 4, I want to run 4412. As simple as that is, we've now built a variable rate map for variable hybrid planting. Is there questions around how we got to where we're at today, or how we got to the maps, or any questions around the seed scripting that we have so far?
Nothing that relates to what you are covering right now, Dan. There are some questions still in queue, but I'll let you keep going because they relate to kind of some exporting issues or questions.
Perfect. So very good. So we'll hit save. So just say that we're satisfied with this map and we want to save it. We'll hit save our changes. And just like we did before when we built that manual script, if we wanted to come back and we wanted to use those same zones for fertility, again, it's the same process. We'll come in here to fertility. And I won't go all the way through this just as kind of a due time, but we'll use our zones from previous prescription. And you can see these are all the zones. So this is the zone set I just built. If we wanted to, all we'd have to do is come in and assign our zones or our rates to our zones, and we'd be able to reuse that script. Once you built the map one time, you can reuse that map for whatever you'd like. And the nice thing is if you don't want to make changes next year, so you paid for the $1 an acre this year, and you don't want to make changes next year, you just maybe want to edit the population, you can come in and reuse that zone and you don't have to repay for it again next year. So just like I said here prior, you can see 2018 script. This was an advanced script we built in 2018. If I wanted to reuse this and I didn't want to make changes, all I'd have to do is come in here and hit edit prescription, change my rates around a little bit, kick it out, and I'm ready to go. So the final thing we'll get to here is the export options. So we've got our 2 scripts for the field. Just say we've got a Pioneer script and our DeKalb script. If we wanted to, what we'll do, come over here to export options. You can actually export them by individual field or by your whole operation. So here, if we wanted to just export for our 2 scripts for this field, what we'll do is we'll select the field name, click over, click all planting scripts. And you can see here, you've got a couple different options. If you're a grower who's using My John Deere, you can connect your My John Deere and this will kick your maps over to My John Deere. Otherwise, there's a whole list of individual shape files or different file types that you can actually download. And this is, again, going to be a little bit dependent on which monitor you're using. So you can see here, we've got Pro 700, Pro 600, CN1s, or even Vipers. I would say just about all of the major variable rate machines, we have a file type available for those. Once we do this, I'll just download the generic shape file. What it's going to do is it's going to zip the file, save it to your screen, you move it to your thumb drive, and you can handle getting it into your monitor. One thing to note is if you're a Gen 3 user and in the past you've actually used the CAB app to deliver the scripts to the 2020, my suggestion to you, just based on some of the things I did last year and the prior years, make sure you are saving those scripts. Even if you're a 2020 guy, save those scripts to a thumb drive just as a backup. And Mindy, is there any more questions on inside of the app? I'm sure there's a few, but
You covered the last one that I was holding. One other one that did come up early on was around, you know, scripting for population. Is it just for population control? You hit on this a little bit, but I want to call the question out. Or can I script for multi-hybrid and population? So just making sure that we clarify that.
yep. So I'll go back to this script here. So we can actually do scripting for populations, and we can also do scripting for multi-hybrids. So I'll go back and I'll reuse this prescription. Come back and edit. So if you wanted to do, so for example, this is a 4-zone field and we're actually running multi-hybrid. If you wanted to run the zones and you wanted to run a multi-hybrid advanced seeding script, you probably have to run it twice. So for example, if you wanted to run 4415 and 4412 and you wanted to get the right zones, you want to get the right population for each zone, what you'd have to do is you'd probably have to run it through the prescription maker twice. So that way you would know which zone or what your population rate would be for your 4412 versus your 4415. It'd be a little bit more work, and I think, than what I'm showing you here. Because what you'd have to do is you'd have to run it through once for 4412, once for 4415. And then once you figure out where you want that hybrid, what you would have to do is you'd have to essentially come in here and build your multi-hybrid script. Because when we build this multi-hybrid advanced seeding script, it's only built around the one hybrid. If you wanted to get the hybrid population recommendations for that second hybrid, you'd have to come in and rebuild it for the second hybrid and then just combine your numbers on one script. Not as easy as just doing one hybrid, but definitely not impossible to do. Hopefully that answered your question. If not, just type another one in there and we'll get back to it.
Excellent, thank you. There are no other questions pending right now. So folks, if you want to get a question answered, now's your time to get it presented to Dan and Jared.
Okay. So I'm going to
And while Deanna is switching things over here, I will take this time to let folks know that we do have new compatibility related to Ag Leader. And so we are excited about that new opportunity. And if you have an Ag Leader display, I would say reach out to your local FieldView representative and your FSR and let them know that you're ready to get going with Ag Leader planting. I know this has been a long-awaited compatibility, and we are offering this as a public beta. So we're still working out a few bugs, but we have seen really good results. And there is an adapter cable that is necessary. So you'll want to make sure that you do get in touch with folks prior to planting so that you have your adapter cable ready to go and that you can collect that data with your Ag Leader display and monitor.
And if I'll kind of pile onto that, if you are one of the guys that is going to do it, I know there is inventory of it, but I would not wait till May 1st to get those orders placed. I know there's inventory and cables ready to go today, but I know it's a pretty high demand, so I would get on the list sooner than later for sure. A couple other things that I had here is just some resources. So if you want to kind of tackle this on your own, if you go into our Knowledge Center, so you go to climate.com into support, what you can do, and I don't have it pulled up here, but what you can do is you can type in your monitor and just write prescription. So just for example, if you're a Pro 700 guy with case, type in Pro 700 prescription. And what you'll do is you'll get all sorts of individual resources for you. So like here's an example. They have step-by-step guides on there for importing your script into your monitor. So it's definitely a neat thing to do. There's a lot of videos. I'll be honest, I do this every day all spring. What I've done is I've saved all those videos to my phone because I still use them religiously all throughout the spring. Really good videos, lots of good step-by-steps in there. If you're trying to tackle this on your own, definitely jump into our Knowledge Center. Again, climate.com, go to our support page and just type in your monitor in the search bar. comes up with some pretty good monitors. Two last things I wanted to talk about is if you guys have more questions around the scripting, maybe you want someone to come out to your farm and kind of guide you through this, get a hold of your dealer or get a hold of your local climate person. We have a whole team across the country they're free of use to you guys to come out to the farm and kind of get you guys going. Their main goal is to help you guys get equipment set up, but I have a pretty good feeling if you guys call with some scripting questions or you need some more help on the farm, maybe you want to sit down with one of us to help kind of guide you in the right direction, feel free to get a hold of us, and then we'll make sure we get out to your farm and kind of help you guys get set up when it comes to this. The last thing, and I'll turn this to Mindy, is about CCA credits.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. Thank you for your expert knowledge here today on our scripting tools within FieldView. Folks, there's a lot of functionality there. We also appreciate you signing up and visiting with us a little bit this morning. We are offering CCA credits for this session. So if you take your camera and aim it at the QR code, that will open up a web page that is a survey where we can collect the necessary information that we need from you to submit this training for CCA credits on your behalf. So we need your name, your CCA number, and your email address. And then there are a couple other questions that will give us some feedback on how to improve webinars such as these. But if you'll take a couple minutes, it'll take less than 5 minutes to provide that feedback and complete your information for CCAs. And then we will submit that through our Bayer teams, and they will then in turn submit that to the CCA office. We do submit these about every 6 weeks, so it could take a little bit of time for your credit to show up, just an FYI on that end. We thank you very much for joining us today. We hope to see you on another webinar. We do place these webinars on our YouTube channel. I placed that link in the chat, so look for that in the next coming days. If you want to go back and refresh or revisit anything that Dan covered today, you can certainly do that, pause the video, move it backward or forward through parts that are relevant for you. And so we do plan on having a pre-planting webinar here towards the end of March to get you all set up and make sure you take care of all those things that you need to take care of before you get your equipment in the field. So thank you again. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Jarrett. And we look forward to seeing you, and we wish you the safest and successful planting season to come.